see it is you've got two choices. You can either keep pretending like nothing bad's ever gonna happen to you, and then when it does, you're saying, uh-oh, or you can get ahead of what's coming so that when it does, not if, you're ready for it. And you're sitting pretty, sipping on Mai Tais next to the pool, working on that Caribbean suntan because you got it covered. So folks, it's time for you to learn the truth about money. It's time for you to take back control of your money so that you are ready for what's about to happen. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for absolute success. No matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnaugle.com and sign up for the Wealth Webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.finleyvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. But the good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. I want to thank every single person out there that's been rocking with us since the very beginning of the show, getting us in the top 1.5% globally, which is unbelievable. It's all because of your sharing, your viewing, your listening, and we want to send out our appreciation to you. Our sponsors, which is Mr. Chris Naugle. I want to thank you, too, for the relationship that I've had with you. You're changing the way that people think about money, not only in their own side, but also for generations to come. And with Mr. Jim DiGiulio was showing me that it's not about the transactions that you do, but it's the relationships that you build that is unbelievable, and that's Finley Volvo Cars of Las Vegas. We got some new sponsors that are coming onto the show too, coming soon, which will be amazing. You know who you are, Mr. Anthony Torres and Merrick. So I'm excited to be able to have that. The star of the show today is a man that I've been very excited to be able to have on. Been chasing him for a little bit of time. I've been following him. He's the founder of the Path of Mastery Marketing and Training. This is a man who helps people to be able to work on the sales aspect, helping entrepreneurs, business owners that struggle with handling sales calls and objections and be able to overcome them. But I think one of the coolest things, not only 20 years in the real estate business and with coaching experience, having a top-rated podcast with Gary Vee on it, Mel Robbins, Grant Cardone, Tim Storey, and many others. But the thing was, I got to spend some time on his podcast recently, and to be able to hear his heart, hear what he's doing and why he wants to do it, I think is absolutely incredible. So please welcome to the show, Mr. David don't forget the Hill.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you, man. It's awesome. Honor to be here today, and thanks. Looking forward to it, man.
Well, I want to jump right in because we were talking about technology, and David was doing a Facebook Live before we started, and I sent him over a link, and he's like, "Man, where's this link going?" He was looking at it, and then he told me, he said, "You know, I could create an automation that will work for the next year and a half and be able to produce top-level sales, but it's hard for me to be able to put a link in my comment." And so I want to jump right into that because, David, you don't pretend to be anything that you're not. And I was saying that the most valuable thing is being able to create those automations. How have you been able to create things that your superpower, that you think is so simple, that helps other people to be able to take their business to the next level?
Man, I don't know. It's an interesting question, bro. I probably just I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. There's just this nerd in me that likes doing those types of things. It's weird. And I haven't always done that. I've always done it for myself. Like I built my real estate business on follow-up. I worked for a publishing company. Before that, we built a regional magazine on follow-up and just having systems in place and reminders and tasks and calendar invite, just all this stuff. And then recently I just, I got connected to some different software and some programs, and I've just been playing around with it, having fun. And it's fun. Yeah. So now not only am I doing it for myself, but we're doing it for other business owners and, real estate agents and some of the clients I just brought on a home inspector, a guy that owns 2 restaurants, a florist. It's wild, bro. Like everybody needs this technology. Everybody.
Well,
so it's been super cool.
Well, David, it's incredible too to be able to see if you're not following David on Instagram or on Facebook or on LinkedIn, you're doing yourself a disservice. But the thing that sticks out to me is the discipline. And I want to go back to young David because, I see there's a family in my neighborhood, and shout out to the Dows, because every time I walk my dog in the morning, you make me feel bad about myself, Damien and Claudine, because your whole family is working out in the garage when I'm walking my dog. But when I watch your Instagram and I see the type of discipline that you have, David, talk to me about where that came from, where you saw the example as young David, and how that became such a part of your life.
Yeah, I didn't have an example as young David, to be honest with you. I wish I could tell you. It's it's weird because I'm looking at, whatever reason, I see myself in the screen, but it's delayed and it's throwing me off. But then underneath is a little window that shows real time. So is that normal? That's
pretty normal. You're fine. Just don't look at yourself.
So I just got to deal with, don't look at myself. All right. I'll try not to look at myself. So to answer your question, I don't know where the the grittiness, I guess, came from. Well, it's not true. I guess it's the resilience. As a child, I had a really, really tough father, really difficult childhood. And the only thing my father taught me how to do at a young age was to fight. So, I in a lot of ways, it's good to know how to fight, but if that's your only skill, it leads to problems, which got me in a lot of problems when I was a young adult and a teenager, because I didn't know how to do much except, punch people or kick people. But you know what? I was always gritty. I was always disciplined. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but
so David, help me with
that stems from my childhood.
Well, help me with this. Like when you were saying that you had a father that taught you how to fight, like, did he physically teach you how to fight, or did you, and when you were talking about the challenges growing up, because it's amazing. Anytime you see a extremely disciplined person, most of the time when you go back in time. So take us back to that time. Like, what were some of the lessons that your dad was teaching you, whether it be through his voice or through his hands?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a tough conversation for me to have. And I appreciate you going here with me. I haven't, my father was just not a good father figure. And I guess if there's anything that I learned from him, it was just resilience. Like, never give up. Like, no matter, like, this is going to sound really weird to say, but, and I've never said this on any podcast or anything, but my father would beat me, and he would say, if you cry while you're being beaten, you're going to be beaten harder. So think about that from a perspective of being taught resilience. So I guess, not that I mean, I have 3 daughters, and they will never experience anything even a fraction, like a millionth of a fraction of that. But, you know, I guess if I have to think of something positive from my childhood and my father, that's probably what comes to me, because I'm very resilient and fearless in a lot of ways. Not always a good thing, but definitely something that came from that.
Well, I think it's amazing to be able to take something that was challenging and you turn it into a superpower. And it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that way. What age was this? Like when you were hearing this from your pop, and your pop is laying hands on you and him saying, if you cry,
yeah,
I'm just going to go at you harder. What age was this?
He was, he had my understanding is he had an alcohol and drug problem. We grew up in New York in the Bronx. When I was young, I ended up coming up here to Massachusetts probably around 12. So it was probably the 10, 11, 12-ish area. And then that was it. We haven't seen him since I ended up I'm coming up to Massachusetts and living with my grandparents, which is, thank God for that, because my grandfather was amazing and, you know, taught me, you know, decency and things like that. But I was still effed up, I'll be honest. But at least I had that. You know what I mean? At least I had that.
When you were going through it at 10, 12, and you go to live with your grandparents, and thank you for sharing too, because when you were saying like you hadn't shared this on any podcast or anything like that, that's what we do. That's the reason why we have this podcast in the first place. That's the reason why, honestly, David, in 207 or 200. Yeah, 277 podcasts. I've never sent out any questions ever. The reason why is because we don't want David's presentation. We want David, and David is amazing at what he does, but he's more amazing at who he is. And I got to spend time with you on these kind of things. So take us to that.
Thank you.
Take us to that 10, 12-year-old that leaves your parents, your birth parents, and goes with what are you going through at that time when you go and live with your grandparents? Because I think it's a place that a lot of people don't talk about, but there's so many people that go through it and they think they're alone.
I mean, it's a long time ago, Kelly. You know, I wasn't planning on having, I got my 2 books right here. I was planning on talking about, but, if you want to go here, it was just, you know, fear, shyness, you know, like, as a child, confusion, right? Like not, you know, just, it was tough. It was tough. I had a really tough childhood, you know, really tough. Even when I got settled down here, you know, I went in, you know, cause we would move, even when, you know, my mother, we would move a lot. Like we would go here and we'd always be trying to escape my father. It was kind of a weird existence, but we would, like, she'd come get me from my grandparents, and then, you know, we'd go here, and then somehow my father would find her, and then we'd go here. And so I never really fit in anywhere. So as I got a little bit older, you know, in my elementary school and then junior high school, I just felt like an outcast, man. I felt like I never fit in anywhere, you know? And you know, so I think that, you know, at a young age, was tough. And then again, as you know, as I shared earlier, the only thing my father really taught me was how to defend myself. Like I knew kickboxing. So at a young age, I knew how to kickbox. And so if someone said something to me or did something to me, I wasn't able to say, hey, I don't really like the way you're talking to me or appreciate that. I just would hit them. And just not knowing any better, you know, and so I got myself in a good amount of trouble in my 20s, you know, and just ended up in some bad places. And you know, it's a part of my life I don't talk about a lot, you know, going back 34 years. It was in a different life. But you know, thank God 21 years ago I got sober. My life's changed. I've changed a lot. I've come a long way. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of what not to do, you know, and I, interestingly enough, a lot of the kids I grew up with at a younger age, you know, there's some good people, but they just never, you know, a lot of them, some of them have died. A lot of them are in jail and prison. a lot of, I know some of them, they just, they just live mediocre lives. They just live in, 3-family apartments and, depressed neighborhoods and smoke weed all day. And I don't know why, for whatever reason, I don't know why I was able to break out of that and do what I did. But I truly believe God has a bigger plan, has a big plan for me. And so, yeah, I used to go, and I need to do more of this conversation I'm having with you right now. I used to go to the schools locally, to South and North and all the high schools at the graduation. And I would talk to the kids because I was a local business owner. And I owned one of the top real estate companies in the area. And so I would go in and talk to the kids and say, listen, just because this is where you come from, you don't have to stay there. There's hope. And so I kind of missed that. That was fun doing that stuff years ago.
Well, I tell you, David, and it's one of the things that I appreciate you even talking about it, because for me, I think that sells more books than anything that you could ever do. The reason why I say it is because, for me, I've got a chance to experience you as just David. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know of all of it because I research you. I know that you're the top in the game. I know that you were the top in the game in the real estate part. And then when you went into the coaching, it's like if someone wasn't coaching with you, it would be silly. But also to be able to understand and know your story and to know who you are. But let's go to that place where when you make those shifts, because this always interests me, you're hanging around with kids and you just said that some of them are either dead, that some of them are in jail, some of them are just kind of living that mediocre life. What were some of the components that caused you, or specific instances that caused you to say, hey, I'm going to choose a different path? Because a lot of people who grow up the way that you did end up doing that to their kids, but you're not doing that.
I'm not 100% sure, man. I don't know. I just think that there's a bigger purpose for me. There's a reason that I'm here. There's a reason I'm not in prison, or dead. Some of the stuff that I did, went through, and, maybe just to be an example, be a great father. One of my vision is inspire millions, 1 or 1,000 or 11,000 at a time. When I was on stage with Gary Keller in front of 11,000 people, right? I mean, so, I can't speak for anybody else. I know when I was younger, my grandparents were an influence on me. I had great, my grandfather, my grandmother. I'm lucky that I was able to live with them for a while and experience something better. Right. And, there was a gentleman named John Alexandrov that came into my life, but that was in my 30s. He was my first business coach. He helped me out a lot, even though I was still doing well in business. We were closing 75 houses a year, just grinding, right? Just friggin' grinding. And he got me up to 120 and working less hours. But, yeah, I don't know, man. It's a great question. I got to think about it. I don't know why I was spared from all the other stuff that a lot of these guys are still living. There's a big reason, and God eventually is going to say, hey, I do a worship room every Sunday on Clubhouse, and we had about 150 people that show up for worship to listen to me share worship music. And, sometimes I'll share some scripture. I'll share some struggles during the week and how I connect that to the God's word. So maybe that's it. I never expected to do anything like that ever, but I just keep showing up, man.
What about when you adjust from your parents, like you go from pops getting after you, and then you come into your grandparents? Is the grandparents a completely different? Is the situation completely different? Is it an encouraging scenario? And if so, what were some of the things that your grandparents were saying to you? Because again, like when we're around and we're at that age, a lot of times one thing that a person could say to you, you could hold on to. I told you about my mom saying to me that I was awesome. Holding on to that, like has helped me through so many different things. What were some of the things that your grandparents were imparting that you hold on to today that has helped you to be able to get through the things that you're doing?
Well, I can tell you I felt safe. That was one. Although I felt, you know, awkward in a lot of ways when I was around other people, with my grandparents, I felt safe. So that was important. And you know, my grandfather was just a really good guy, hard worker. He was a distributor ironically for alcohol. So he used to bring me with him everywhere. So he'd bring me to the package stores and you know, he'd do the orders and I got to go with him and you know, my grandmother too, you know, they were super cool. She used to play the piano. So she'd bring me sometimes with her when she'd play the piano. And so, you know, I got to see that, which is really cool. My grandfather would bring me out on the bike and drive me around the neighborhood on his bike. So I saw normalness, which I think that honestly is probably what saved me to even have that experience. I think one of the challenges now, as I'm thinking through this, I've never thought about this before, man. So appreciate the conversation. But I think maybe some of those other people that I was talking about, some of those other guys, and some of them are good guys, they've just never experienced anything else besides where they are, you know, and it really is a metaphor for a lot of things in our life, business and where we are in our business and the people that we spend our time with, right? And our level of success is really determined a lot by the people we are spending our time with, right? So I think that might have been part of it.
How did you get past? Because a lot of times I think people will have an influence like you did, right? So, you know, have Pop go at you the way they did. And we try and accomplish our way out of the situation, meaning that we become so focused, so locked in that really anything we touch, we go either 0 miles an hour or we go 100,000 miles an hour with it. But it depends on which things we touch. And so how were you able to kind of shift that? And you said that you had a paradigm shift. What was it, 21 years ago? Congratulations on that. 21 years ago, becoming sober. Like, did you apply that type of resilience when you went into into drinking or whatever it was? And the reason why I'm asking is because my pop told me he never did cocaine. And I said, why? And he said, because no one had enough of it. And because his personality and your personality is very similar, where when you do something, you're going to go at it 100,000 miles an hour. Am I correct on this?
I used to, if I'm committed to something 100%, but there's a lot of truth in that.
So how do you,
now as I get older, I really pay more attention to what I'm committing to and doing. Like right now I'm training for an Ironman, right? So, I mean, this morning, 3 hours, right? Like that's just part of my morning routine, 3 hours of training. And it's just going to get longer and longer as we get closer to September. So that I am kind of still extreme in that way, but I'm doing it for, for positive, for a positive instead of a negative.
How does one shift that kind of paradigm? And again, like a person with the type of traits and superpowers that you have, how do you find those positive things? How could a person find those positive things? Because if they have that superpower like you do, they've got to be very careful at the things that they go at, because they'll go at them 100,000%, right? So how can a person define or figure out what is going to be right for them and what's going to be the most positive for them?
For me, it's just been trial and error, man. I think just starting to know myself more. Some of the things, like I don't think, personally, I don't feel like there's any mistakes. I think, I've did some different directions that didn't work out. But if I didn't go that direction, then I wouldn't be where I am today, right? Like I stepped away from a real estate team that was, providing, funding a pretty good life, right? And took a team leader role, running a couple of Keller Williams offices. Well, I could look back at it now and say that was a grave mistake, right? Because after 8 months, my team fell apart. I lost that income. I was making half of what I was making, less than half. And now we're out in Connecticut. We sold out, right? But in the end, I learned a lot from it. I became a better person, and it opened up different doors. Because of it, I ended up transitioning to another real estate company, right? Because of it, I ended up focusing on what I love doing now, training and coaching. So although in the moment it was challenging, then the hindsight is like, okay, there was a reason everything happened. Otherwise, I'd probably still be complacent at Keller Williams right now. Nothing wrong with Keller Williams, by the way, but I would have never left Keller Williams ever, because that's how I am. I'm a grinder. But because that experience was so tough with Connecticut and the OP of that office and just everything that happened, I was like, there's no way I was leaving Keller, and I didn't want to, but I did not want to. Jason Abrams reached out to me. I was literally, a lot of people don't know this, I was cold calling brokerages for Gary Keller directly. Like, I was the only person in the company doing this. I was working directly with Gary and Jason. Like, they had me cold calling indie brokerages and setting up meetings. And they were paying me because I left the Connecticut role and I had no income. So essentially they were paying me as a consultant to just pay me, keep me. And COVID hit, and they said, we have to put everything on hold. And I didn't want to leave. It was tough. COVID hit. They had to put it on hold. Now I had to go back and get my my real estate license and start. Like, I had to earn money, right? Like, I can't just sit around. They're not giving me the money they were giving me anymore. And I had to get my real estate license going again. I still had it, but it wasn't like in active status. And that was when it clicked for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to I've got to go back to Keller Williams. And the guy that was running the Connecticut office was now the regional director. So he actually moved up, because I recruited 200 agents into his office in 2 years. Not just me, but me with a team. There was a team of us. So I'm not going to take all the credit, but we built a team, and we built a recruiting machine. Like, we were bringing agents in, brought in over 200 agents. And but him and I just couldn't see eye to eye on anything. It was tough. And then he became the regional director. And I wanted to move to, and this is a crazy story. I'm telling all this, but my wife, like, they wanted us to move to Austin, Texas, which I was okay with. But my wife's like, I'm not friggin' moving. I'm done. We just moved to Connecticut. That was a friggin' grave failure. Not moving. Like, Mr. Family, the whole deal, right? And so we couldn't move to Austin. And I just had no choice but to leave Keller Williams at that point. It was weird. But again, now thinking back, I probably would have never, ever left. I was a trainer. I was one of their one of their bold coaches. I'm still certified with the One Thing book. I mean, so many things. And I just left because I couldn't deal with it anymore, with that situation.
So David, how do you, as a person that you were saying, like, you're a grinder, and understanding the backstory, it makes so much sense why you're a grinder, why you have resilience in you. I mean, most people that are listening right now couldn't imagine, some can, but couldn't imagine hearing, I'm going to whoop you, you cry, you're getting whooped harder. Most people, whether it be from their father or from their business or from their relationship or wherever in their life, they don't have, and I'm going to say this, just take it with a grain of salt, they don't have the advantage that you did in hearing that so early on, because the advantage that you have is created the type of resilience that you have. Although sometimes it creates the grind that makes us think that we need to stay in the grind. How can we be in the grind, but also be peaceful and be able to set into that? Or do you have to choose one or the other? Yeah,
it's a balance. I think I think it's like anything else, you pick and choose, right? Have you read the book, The One Thing? I mean, it's like,
no,
I'm focusing on one thing at a time. So when I'm in my business, I'm 100% in my business. When I'm with my kids, like I was this weekend, I'm with them. We went and saw the Little Mermaid. You know, my daughters, I have 3 daughters, all amazing, 2 grandchildren now, super cool. Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, so I just be with them, you know, and I think that's the only way that I know. But yeah, you know, it's hard for me to turn it off because I want to keep going. I want to keep going. You know, it's like every day, it's like, all right, I track how much money I make every day. I know what my goals are. I track my phone, everything. It's like, and you know, so it's a constant. And so for me, I got to turn it off. And sometimes turning it off is meditating. Like I'll just, in the middle of the day, I'll take 15 minutes to do some meditation. I journal every morning, every night. So I get a lot of little ways to kind of turn it off. And I'm lucky, I'm blessed. And I guess this is a blessing from my father, which I thought he actually did share this with my wife. I can sleep through just about anything because of what I had to listen to as a kid and what I had to go through. I had to learn to sleep through just all the chaos at my house. Him beating up my mom and just all the other stuff that was going on and being scared. So like in a lot of ways, I can sleep. I fall asleep and I can sleep through just about everything. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but that's, I know a lot of people that struggle with sleep. I don't. And I think that's a gift.
David, I was on a plane one time and my life changed. And there was a guy that was sitting next to me and he asked me a question that I thought I had the answer to. And he said, what do you fear? And I was like, I don't fear nothing. I don't fear nothing. I grew up not in the greatest situation. I said, it doesn't matter the circumstance to me. I'm going to be able to work through it. I said, I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 people and I'm never going back. And he looked at me, and this was a guy who I didn't know. And he said, fear, fear, and more fear. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, everything that you just said, you're working out of fear. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I ain't going back. Like, I know what it's like to be in that spot. I'm never going back. I'm going to wake up every single day. I'm going to go that way. He said, you're working out of fear. And he said, the fear of going back to that place, that's what's driving you right now. He said, what do you actually want to do? And I sat and I was like, I could think about all the things that I didn't want to go back to, but it was very, very tough for me to answer the question. So going through all the things that you go through, what does David want?
Just to be a great father, a great husband, a role model, you know, just to serve. Like I love like when I was on stage with Gary Keller, that was like I want to do that all the time. You know, in front of 11,000 people. I don't think a lot of people will ever experience what it's like. Like you can't see anything because there's so much light beaming down on you and the room's black. But like to know that and then to make a comment and then everybody laughs. And that's what I love. I just got off a coaching call right before this. Like I could tell the guy had a breakthrough because I challenged him. He's looking to get 5 new clients before the end of the month. And I said, okay, because part of his strategy is cold calling. And he owns a construction company. So he's calling, project managers for big jobs. And I said, okay, call me. And, and his call wasn't, his call was not that good, to be honest with you. Like it was decent, right? Like an average. But then I says, okay, man, so we'll just stop you there. Good job. I said, let me call you now. And you could just see like, he was like, wow, holy cow, what a difference. Right. So now I says, okay, now we're going to teach you how to do that. And you could just see it was a different like energy out of him, like going from like, hey, you don't really know what you're talking about to, wow, I want to learn how to do that. And that's what I love doing, you know, and just tough situation, you know, challenge, you know, and helping people, oh my God, I just got my first listing. They're all excited because, you know, they followed something that I taught them how to do. And, you know, my daughters, you know, my daughters are amazing. I've got my oldest daughter, Jacqueline, I mean, they live in a amazing 5,000 square foot home. Just like, it's a gift, man. You know, you're talking to someone that grew up in a car. You know, my two younger daughters, super confident, amazing kids. To me, that's what it's about, man. Just to be able to have my background, but still have all this around me. And then, yeah, you know, the other stuff, I want, you know, like, I feel like my wife and I, you know, we deserve to have anything we want in life, right? Anything. That's where I'm at. If Grant Cardone can have a jet, I can have a jet, right? If I want to drive a Bentley truck, then I'll drive a Bentley truck. Why? Because I can. That's all. Do I have to? No. That's kind of how I think. I don't ever want to be limited. Right. So maybe, who knows? Maybe like you said earlier, maybe I'm running away from fear as I say this, but I don't know.
But when you say that, like you can have whatever it is that you want. Most of them, I mean, what I found most of the time with people who want to really help people, and it's interesting too, and that's why I like to have the conversations, is because most of the time people who want to help somebody have needed help at some point and didn't really receive it. Does that make sense? And so question for you is, what has your wife taught you in your marriage through this stuff? Because experience-wise, when I've ever tried to take my grit, my perseverance, my business acumen into my marriage, it never works. And so, and I always learn lessons, and I learn lessons that are principle-based that I can apply in my business, but I've never been able to switch it the other way. I've never been able to take a business principle and tell my wife, like, yo, we need to, you know, list out all of our goals and then blah, 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 blah. She's like, yeah, but we need to sit here and talk and we need to connect. So what has David's wife taught you that you've then been able to apply into your business?
Yeah, I need to soften up. I'm pretty hardcore. I was a lot more hardcore. Like, even people now think I'm hardcore. Like, you should have seen me 20 years ago when I was running my real estate team, you know, or 15 years ago, or yeah. So my wife is, she's the opposite of me. Just what you just described. You know, she's not structured at all. If I tell you, she don't want to have to get up and, you know, if she wants to go to the gym in the morning, she'll just go to the gym. If you tell her to go to the gym, she's not going to go to the gym, right? That's just how she's wired, right? Like, so she doesn't want to have to follow any routines. I mean, she does a little bit, but yeah, it's the opposite of me. She's a great mom, tremendous listener, feelings, you know, and I'm like I've been the opposite, you know. She's helping me become better at feelings. I'll tell you that much, you know, like listening. She's a really good wife. It's, you know how they say opposites attract, right? Like, she's the opposite of me, but we both learn to, you know, love on each other and respect each other and support each other. And, you know, and I think we've had our little clashes, right? Like probably most husband and wives, but, you know, I think we do really good as a couple, and it's neat. It's neat to be able to do that especially because of what I saw growing up and what I saw with my mother and father, you know?
Absolutely. So talk to us too about, like, I mean, coaching at the highest level, like you're doing. I love it because you're not coaching from a sense of, you know, you need to do this because I read about it or I studied it. You actually did it. And that's why I admire you at such a high level, David, is because as a coach, the reason why you're so successful at that and why every single person should be working with you on that is because you not only lived it in business, but you've lived it in your life. And that grit and resilience doesn't come because you read about it. It's because you do it. How do you help people, though, to become like, to toe the line between their routines being their religion, right? And when I'm not talking from a religious state of like God or whatever it is, but a lot of times people get so focused on their routine that when their routine gets busted, they don't know how to react. When they get taken out of their element, when they get drug into a place, like you have this skill set that's unbelievable because your resilience. You could put David in any place in the world and David is going to succeed. But a lot of people think, okay, if I don't wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I wake up at 6 on this particular day, everything's going to be off. But you seem to be able to adapt so amazingly. How do you teach that?
It's not easy to teach. I think people people have to want it first off, right? Like, yeah, you have to want it, be teachable. What I've learned about a lot of people is a lot of people aren't coachable, you know, and sometimes I'm not coachable, but then I catch myself and thinking, okay, wow, hold on a minute, right? Like, somebody asked me earlier today, I was on a call with a group of realtors and somebody brought their broker on and introduced me to their broker. And they were like, hey, would you be, after 10 minutes with him, he's like, would you be willing to come relocate and run our 200 agent brokerage? I was like, no, of course not. Not in a million years. But then it clicked and I said, but I'll listen to you. Right? Like I'll at least listen to you, because if I didn't, I'd be a hypocrite. Right? And I know I'm going off your question, but I think back to your question, it's I got to be open-minded, and it only starts with one thing, right? Like, I don't need you to change your whole life overnight, but let's start with one thing, right? Like, make a decision that, okay, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to get up and not hit my snooze button. So let's do that for 2 weeks, and don't even do anything. If you want, go lay downstairs. I mean, obviously I'm not going to tell them to do that, but like, there's a win, right? Get a win, start with a win, and then we'll keep adding things to it. Like, you want to change your routine, it starts with one thing. What happens, Kelly, is a lot of people, they try to change everything at the same time, and it's overwhelming. Remember, I don't know if were you ever at Keller Williams?
No, but
were you?
No.
Yeah. So one of the things at Keller is they teach you to lead generate 3 hours a day. This is how I learned. 3 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 3 hours a day is a lot, right? Like, I was doing it, I did it, but for most people, they're not lead generating 10 minutes a day. So when you say, I want you to start lead generating 3 hours a day and keep doing that, it lasts 3 days and they're like, F this is impossible. But what if you said, you know what? I want you to lead generate for 15 minutes and do that every day. Set a timer and do that every single day for 2 weeks. Can you do that? I can pull that off. Great. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can only do, I want you to call 2 people, right? You got it. I feel like that's how we do. We start small and then we build off that. You know, that, and I think that can apply to all areas. Just like I'm training for this race right now. Right now, my workouts are 3 hours. In August, they're going to be 4.5, 5 hour workouts every day. When I started back in March, they were 45 minutes. I didn't start off at 3 hours. I didn't start off at 5 hours, right? So I think it's the same. That's my opinion, is that's how we help people, by giving them little things that they can achieve and get wins, right? Small wins. And then we'll continue. Then you keep, adding up those small wins will lead to bigger wins.
What's the small win that a kid that is going through some stuff, right? So you talked about I keep going back earlier on, but there's so many people that relate to that can't get out of the struggle part of it, and you have been able to, and you're such a phenomenal example of it. What would be a small win for a kid if you were in front of, you know, let's talk of, you know, high school, college kids that had grown up pretty strong, you know, parents maybe abusive, whatever it is, and they're like, but David, you don't understand what's happening to me. You have no idea. All these things are stacked against me. The world is against me, and I just can't seem to. What would be a win for that person right now?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think a mentor would be a win, finding somebody that could help them, right? I think that an influence, like for me, I didn't have influence. You know, I got, like I said, I got lucky that I was able to live with my grandparents for a while. And then, you know, when I was younger, there was this kid Daryl that I was friends with. I don't know how I became friends with him, but you know, he had his family was wealthy. They had money, and I stayed with him a lot more than I stayed at my own house. So I think that helped, being around that as well. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have that at home. You know, and then my mother did, you know, do pretty well for herself in the end. She's like me. She's a grinder. She's a, you know, hard worker, but she went through a lot too. But she ended up building publishing a magazine, and I ended up working with her for a while. But yeah, I think having those influences in my life, I think that's a win. And I feel like it's such a personal question though. Like, what's a win for me is probably different than what's a win for you, right? Or what's a win for my wife? My wife is, we're bringing in something called Master Networks. You and I should talk about this. It's actually similar, in a lot of ways, it's similar to BNI. A friend of mine, Chaz Wilson, started it years ago, and him and I connected at an event I spoke at a few months ago. We hadn't seen each other in 12 years. And ironically, we were both speakers at an event. It was really wild in Dallas. And, but anyway, my wife now is making calls to talk to people about Master Networks because she's excited about it. And she's literally down there making phone calls. I haven't seen my wife make phone calls in, you know, since I was trying to make her make phone calls, you know, 10, 12 years when she was part of my team and didn't want to make calls. So for her, that's a huge win that she's actually, but it wasn't like I didn't make her do that. She found something she was excited about. And now she's reached out to a few of her friends and people she knows, like an attorney and a mortgage guy. And they're like, oh my God, they're all excited. So now they're excited. So she's getting more excited. So now she's like, well, I'm gonna call this person. I'm gonna call this guy. Like, it was so funny because she's like, did you talk to Jimmy K? I'm like, yeah, I called him and he said he's not interested. She's like, you wouldn't mind if I called him, would you? I was like, damn, right? Like, to me, I was like, okay, right? Like, wow, good for you. Like, that's what I said, because, you know, that's just different, right? So that's what I mean with a win is, shit, just go make some phone calls. Sorry, I swore, but for some people, just go pick up the phone, you know, go talk to some people. Go, whatever it is for you, go to the gym, right? For some, just go to the freaking gym, right? Like, just for all of it, I think it's such a personal question, though.
But I think it's great the way that you answer it, is because I think a lot of times people will can an answer and say to a person, you have to go and do X. But for you, you're looking at the person, which I think is unbelievable. Take us through the DNA of a phone call and the objections, because I think this part is so important. And not only if you're selling, but I think you're selling any time in life, no matter what you're doing. But it gets such a bad name when you go into, I'm not a salesperson. Everyone is selling something all the time.
Yeah.
But take us through the DNA of a phone call, the objections, and how to be able to get over those objections.
So first off, I am a salesperson. I will never tell you I'm not trying to sell you anything, because that is inauthentic. And whenever I hear that, it drives me nuts. When people, oh, I'm not trying to sell you. Well, you're full of it. You are trying to sell something. The fact that you even said that tells me you're trying to sell something, right? So you don't have to say it, because people will know, right? It's like, you don't need a disclaimer. And so for me, it's like, I let people know up front, hey, this is what I do. I love doing it. And I'm not selling you anything. I'm giving you something that helps you. And if I'm a salesperson, I'm like Zig Ziglar is, Zig is one of my idols. Obviously, you know who Zig Ziglar was. He passed away. But Zig says, I am a salesman, and I'm a proud salesman. I'm the same as him. He's one of my role models. The way he tells stories, the way he calls himself a salesperson, the way he sells, everything. Like, to me, that's so, yeah. In the process, handling objections, know the objections before you call, right? I already know, I called so many for sale by owners and expireds in my life. I know what they're going to tell me before they tell me. So I'm prepared. I smile. I have fun. I don't take myself too serious, right? Like, there's nothing these guys are going to do to me that I have already been through 100 times worse. I don't care what somebody has to say to me on a phone call. I think is not that I don't care. I mean, but I'm not, but it doesn't faze me. So I'd say number one is be prepared, right? Be prepared. Okay. Put together an authentic, transparent greeting. Tell people why you're calling them. This is what I did with the kid earlier. Like, when he called, he's like, "Hey, I'm a local guy. I see you guys have a site, and I'm looking to get in with some project managers." I'm just like, "Hey, my name's David. The reason for my call is," and that's it. Transparent, right? And then handling objections is just knowing the objection and practice. Kelly, I practiced, here's my extremeness again. I had 5 role play partners a week. 5 different, I'd have a different role play partner every day of the week for probably 14 years. And I missed a couple handfuls of role. Like, literally, if somebody didn't show up more than twice, I just fired them and found another role play partner that would show up. Like, that's how committed I was to role play. So if you think about that from an athlete's perspective, it's the same thing as practicing. Like Michael Phelps. Why did Michael Phelps do what he did? Because he showed up at 4 a.m. to swim. Everybody else showed up at 6. Right? He swam on Sundays. Everybody else took Sundays off. So do you have to do all that? Probably not. You could probably still get to a high level, but you do have to do some of it. Does that help?
Absolutely, it does. It's incredible to be able to see the superpower and to understand the backstory, because with a person understanding your backstory, when you say you need to put in this many hours, you need to be able to do that. Well, hell, when you don't have, because a lot of times people don't connect to a person because they don't understand the backstory of it, and they don't they turn off to the extremity because they're like, well, you're just too extreme. But there's a reason why David is extreme. There's a reason why you're as focused as you are. And I compliment you, man. I just think that it's incredible, what you do and how you do it. But more importantly, who you are as a person and how you're able to connect with people, I think is tremendous, So
thank you, man.
Man, if we had your pop in the room right now, and I stepped out, and you got to tell him three things, what would those 3 things be?
Oh man, dude, come on, man. I don't know. Yeah, tough question. What would I tell him? Tell him that he's a piece of shit, to be honest. And he's not going to beat me up anymore, right? Like, I'm a lot bigger now and stronger. And I don't know. Maybe I just pray for him at this point. I probably just tell him I want to pray for him, and that's all.
It's unbelievable to be able to hear that. How do you help kids, like when you were doing it, when you were going to the schools and things like that and sharing and when you were saying you used to, I'm going to speak some life to you, man. I really think that that's a component that is going to take your already unbelievable business to a completely other level, because this part, and I tell you that in the comments that you don't get a chance to see, in the comments, it's blowing up about all those things. No one commented on the sales techniques. Everybody commented on the resilience that you had. And I'll share with you some of them, talking about the grinder creds because of what you went through. They commented on how you can, they never thought that about how they sleep and how you could sleep through anything. Mary Beth, who is one of your friends, was talking about your grit as far as, you know, lived in NYC.
Oh, I forgot this was being streamed on Facebook.
All these things, man, I want you to understand, like for me, speaking life into you, that part of your journey is so, so important. And it is an aspect of your business that, again, an already thriving, crazy, amazing coaching business and anything that you touch, you know it's going to succeed. You know that because of who you are. But I tell you, you sharing your story with kids and, you know, for the future generations to understand that they can make it through those things it's unbelievable, man. It's really, really, really impactful.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Amen. I definitely need to do more of it. I need to get back to it.
How could you help a kid to be able to get to, you know, and you talk about this is a personal situation. So, you know, but how can they get to that reconciliation point as opposed to you seem to turn those negative experiences into positive fuel. But a lot of times it just burns the person up. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again in life. How do you turn it into positive fuel?
I never really thought through how. I guess it's just, for me, it's just like doing. You know, I think the fuel is, you know, I won't quit. Not going to quit. In a lot of ways, I'm like David Goggins. You know, I for whatever reason, I cannot seem to get him on my podcast. I've gotten so close, but like we have this. Are you familiar with his story? Did you read his book?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he and I have a very similar father. Like,
okay.
But anyway, yeah, I think similar to him, I'm extreme with sports, with, you know, pushing myself. You know what I mean? And I think that's how I, yeah, I forgot the question. I apologize.
Well, David, also, here's a follow-up question with it is how do you avoid becoming your father with just a different method? Meaning that a lot of times, and I see this happen, and I see, and honestly, like, and I'm a Goggins fan, but if you notice the way, like technique-wise, a lot of times you see the same remnants in the person, but it's a different technique. So it might have been a father beating the hell out of their son, but then we see the father beating the hell out of the son on discipline of having to, you know, succeed or to be able to do that. How do you, like, this is a $1 billion question to me, is because a lot of times people will be like, no, I'm just doing it for the positive because I want to push my kid to this in a positive way. But a lot of times the kid is taking the same blows. They're taking the exact same blows. How do we not become that? And it seems like you've turned it into the positive. That's why I asked you the question, is a lot of times people don't know how to, you know, they go from like, I'm not going to, you know, drink anymore. So then I'm going to turn that addiction, my addictive personality, and I'm just going to turn it towards something else. But then they become addicted to that thing anyway. So it's the same stuff. It's just a different substance. Yeah.
Yeah. I did that 20 years ago. Ironically, when I got sober is when I got my real estate license. So, I kind of went through that, right? Like 6 months after I got sober, I got my real estate license. Yeah, I mean, I love my daughters. I want to create as much opportunity as I can for them. And, you know, and I with my wife, I think we discuss it. I really like trying to help them self-discover what they want to do and what they're really good at. And, you know, like I coached softball with my 10-year-old last year. She just didn't like it. I wanted to keep doing it because to me it was like, okay, we get time together, but she just didn't like it. So I don't know why. I mean, she just didn't want to do it. So I just this year bailed out. You know what I mean? And a part of me wanted to make her do it. Like what you just said, there was a big part of me, and I've struggled with this with my wife. Like she should do it. She should be more disciplined. She should. But then I said no. But now, she loves karate. So she's doing karate. She's doing, 3-4 days a week. So, she found something else. So, and she enjoys doing it. So I feel like helping them figure out what they want to do and supporting them on it. But then at the same time, giving them influence. Like nobody taught me to invest in real estate when I was a kid. So that's something that I want to help them understand, right? Like a friend of mine, I was talking about this morning. I bought a condo for $60,000. And, it worked out. And if, I had it for 3 or 4 years, I sold it for like 140, right? So not a terrible thing. A friend of mine, whoever was coaching him at the time or giving him advice told him to buy a 4-family. So he came up with, 60 grand, bought a 4-family and sold it and made $400,000. Right. So to me, it's like, that is the type of advice I wish somebody gave me when I was a kid. Instead of buying a condo, go buy a 4-family, rent out 3 units, live for free. And then when you cash out, you got $400,000. Right. So I think it's the things like that I want to be able to teach my daughters, which I am teaching my daughters.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason why I started the podcast, David, is because of iconic people like yourself. I think that, and for me, icons are not just people who have accomplished things. It's people who are real, like real human beings that have gone through challenges, that have overcome them, and then want to make things better for the people that are coming behind them. So I started it because of my 2 kids, which is Maddox and McKenna. Maddox is 11 years old, and McKenna is 14 years old. Maddox marches to the beat of his own drum, and McKenna is, she is one of the most heartfelt young ladies and has the most sarcastic personality that you can ever think of. And so what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could say both their names, it would be awesome.
Yeah. What advice would I have for Maddox and McKenna? In what context?
David's life.
In my life?
In David's life, or I mean, you got an 11-year-old.
What
you got
would I say to an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old?
No, not to Maddox and McKenna.
To them specifically. Okay. That's a good question, man.
I got good questions, David. Like you already said a bunch of times. Like you guys, that's a tough question. I'm not trying to ask you the easy questions, David. That's the reason why I did it. I wanted you. And honestly, like. Everyone out there listening, you got an authentic David today. You got the David Hill that's one of the baddest coaches on the planet, that has lived it, that has gone through challenges. And honestly, if you're not getting coached by him, you're doing yourself a disservice. But David, you're an icon. That's why I had you on the podcast. And the reason why I started the podcast is because 2 kids, Maddox and McKenna. So what advice do you have for Maddox and McKenna? Use both their names, brother. Let's get it.
I love it. And now I know why you have sponsors. I was going to ask you about that earlier. Maddox and McKenna. So one's 11, one's 14, correct? Yep. Which one? Tell me.
Maddox is how old? Maddox is 11.
Okay, and McKenna's 14.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'd say Maddox, McKenna, you guys are blessed to have an amazing father, first off, and wow, just be grateful, because if you listen to my story, I didn't have that influence. And I think, if you follow in your dad's footsteps and you guys are going places. And I just want to say, man, if you're anything like your dad, then I'm a fan. So keep doing what you're doing. Do what you love. Don't let anybody tell you can't do anything. Okay. Maddox, 11-year-old, you do whatever you want. Okay. Whatever you set your mind to. And McKenna, 14-year-old, same thing. You do whatever you want to do, and don't ever let anybody tell you can't. So that's my advice to you.
David, you have been a pleasure, man. We're going to have the links to all your books. We're going to have the links to those. We're going to have the links to your coaching program also. But again, for me, like when I look at if I think of performance in these last couple of months since you and I have known each other, when I think of performance, I think of David Hill. I think of you because I see it. I see the way that you love your family. I see the way that you love your wife. I see the discipline that you take to do the Ironman. And I think that it's just so incredible. I tell you, what I want to challenge you to is, when I was speaking life to you earlier, your message, not the message of the sales, not the message of the stuff, but the message of who David is. When you said that I haven't said this on any podcast, you need to say that on every damn podcast that you could get on, because that will sell more books than anything else in the entire world. And you, David, you're a superhero, man. You're an absolute superhero to experience what you experience in your life and to turn it around into a positive, man. I want you to know how much impact that has.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great reminder, and thank you. And yes, I keep showing up every day because I love it, man. And I love being a great dad. I love being a great husband. Despite everything I went through, it's a gift to me. It's like, with everything I went through, I get to be a great husband and dad. Like, wow, how cool is that? Right? So amazing, man. Just thank you for doing this, and thank you for the conversation. I'm looking forward to listening to it, because I honestly have no idea what I said.
Well, here's the thing, and I wasn't going to say this, but now that we're winding down on the show, David, I want to tell you the reason why I could see you looking at your notes, and I took you away from your notes. The reason why is because I don't give a shit about your notes. I don't. No one gives a shit about your notes. People give a shit about who you are. And I haven't cussed this much on the podcast, but I want to tell you this because I took you away from your notes, because the world needs to know who David Hill is. And when the world knows who David Hill is, you will see an explosion, an absolute explosion. But I watched your eyes. I watched your eyes, and I watched you look to the notes. And I watched you with the first couple of questions. I saw that you came out of your element. And I said, like, thank God. Thank God for that. Your books are amazing. We're going to have links to them. Your coaching, amazing. All those things. But more amazing than any of that, and I have never done this on the podcast in 278 episodes, in saying what I'm saying right now. More than your notes, more than all the techniques that you ever have, David, when you expose that part of it and you sit in it, and when you listen back to this and you say that, wow, that was a question I didn't think, well, there's a reason why I took you there. Because there's a place inside of you that hasn't been explored yet. There's a place inside of you that is going to bless so many people. And I want to encourage you in it, man. And I did it on purpose today. And I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it during the time, but I'll say it now. I did it on purpose. I didn't talk about your books on purpose, because your books will sell because you're David and you're gangster, and every single person should be working with you. Every person that's not reading your books is doing a disservice to themselves. Everyone you know that is selling and doesn't coach with David is doing themselves a disservice, because you know how to be able to handle objections. You know how to be able to take someone and explode their business. You already know. And your audience is waiting, but they're waiting for that David without the notes to show up. I love you, man. You're amazing. You're incredible, David. And I can't wait, dude. And you're not getting away from me either. You're going to be my friend for the rest of your life. I want you to mark that on there. This isn't. You're gonna
coach me on how to get some sponsors for my advertisers for my show is what we're gonna do.
I absolutely love you, man. I love you to death, and I want you on again and again and again. And I can promise you, at some point, we'll go through all the sales techniques. But I want to go through all the David. I want to go through all the David, which is amazing, man. You have blessed my life in such a tremendous way. Man. You're incredible, man. You're awesome. David, you're officially off the hot seat.
All right, bro. Thank you, man. That was awesome.